Hi, hello everyone. I'm here today with Meredith Placko. She's an on-air talent. She's a personality and a freelance writer. She has a quite a bit of a history where she's been working since her days back in high school, and I will let her talk about that a little bit right now. And again, Meredith, thank you for talking to me
Thank you so much for having me, Walter. I'm really excited to just talk. As you said, I'm a personality. My mother would agree with you.
today.
um,
And okay.
oh no, I was just gonna say it's a crazy whirlwind how I ended up here. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of share my experiences with everyone.
And we can jump into that at the beginning. For those listening, we are going to get into some heavy topics today about online bullying and sexism and talking about the Gamergate issue that happened a couple years ago as well. That's still ongoing today. But first, a little bit about your history for your fans and just for those who are new to you. Can you talk to us about, because you also have a history in journalism and were a journalist for quite some time.
Yeah, I actually I started working in radio in 1994, which some might put me at 40, but no, it was my first year of high school. I was at Piper High School in Sunrise, Florida, and we had a fully operational FCC licensed radio station, 88.5 WKBX, and we broadcast throughout Broward, Dade, and Palm Beach counties. And from there, I actually started reading news on the air. We'd get AP copy and we'd have to rewrite it, and I'd read the news every day. I also DJ'd. I had a weekly show, mainly goth industrial music, as you do. And from there, it really just stemmed into a career in broadcasting. After high school, I got a job as an executive producer and co-host for a radio called Radio Sci-Fi. It was a nationally syndicated entertainment, pop culture, and geek talk show. It was we recorded in Orlando, Florida at WDBO. It's a Cox Communication owned station. By the time I left 4.5 years later, we were syndicated in 32 markets. It was really neat to be a pioneer in that field. I've always been a huge nerd. I played video games from the first time I could buy a Nintendo, and to be able to really do something in that realm and at such an early stage, really I think set my career. But did get to a point where XM and Sirius were taking over and the writing was on the wall, and I had a degree in digital media and communications, but I wanted to do more in journalism. I was dating a news photographer at the time, so went back to school, got a degree in journalism, and started working at my first news station in Orlando. And from there, it spawned a 10-year career. I went actually behind the scenes. I was a producer. I started as an associate producer and field producer, and eventually got to be a field producer for NBC Network News. And then in 2014, I felt like I had achieved a lot. I wanted to pursue the next leg of my career, and I was really missing geek culture. So I literally was like, peace, bye, and moved to Los Angeles, where I've been working as a freelance writer and talk show host. I've worked for Geek.com, Comic Book Resources, comicbook.com, and one of my favorite outlets you can find me on is the Young Turks What the Flick, doing television reviews. So it's been a journey, and I'm still waiting for the next big thing. I think really a travel show. I think that's what I want to conquer next, is travel.
And not a lot of students, well, people in general, get into journalism at that early of an age. What sparked you at around 14 years old to basically say, hey, this is something I might want to do, and I think this is fun, especially in the early 90s? That's
Oh,
not.
it was earlier. You can blame April O'Neil from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for that. I loved her. I loved her yellow jumpsuit. I loved her red hair. I would wake up, my mom loves telling people this. I'd wake up and I'd instead of watching morning cartoons, I wanted to watch the local news. And so we'd always have to tune in to WSVN, and I could watch what was going on in the world. So, and then I'd watch cartoons before I had to go to school. But I'd always go to school like ready to talk about the news of the day with my teachers, and then cartoons with my friends. But I don't know. I think, for a period, I remember my mom's a computer IT specialist. She works in computers and systems programming. She's retired now, but she wanted to be a journalist. And I think maybe she must have told me a story about working as a journalist at some point, and maybe it stuck with me. But for as long as I remember, that's what I wanted to do. And and I know like a lot of people have the option of working at the school newspaper, or they do like the TV shows, but the radio program was so unique that I went to summer school from middle into high school, and I had a chance to start there, and I got my FCC license in 1995 at 14, and I was able to start on air my first day in high school, and I think like just such a unique experience. I couldn't pass that up. I just wanted to, it's that need to be different, but also that need to explore and do something new. That's kind of always been my thing. I think that's why like some people have worked in the industry for like 35 years, and I wouldn't say I jump around a lot, but I really like to experience what the broadcast world has to offer.
And being in journalism in that atmosphere, and to going into more of what is described to as a geek and nerd culture, was there a big transition period, or was it pretty much just, this is actually what I've been doing for fun forever anyway, so it made it easy?
Excuse me. I think the reality is that there was more credence being given to pop culture. With having started with radio sci-fi, and then we see a couple of years later the rise of tech TV and G4, which I mean still to this day is one of the best examples of pop culture meets journalism. Once that went away, there was a huge hole. But in the last couple of years, you've seen a lot of like the rise of Comic-Con and conventions in general, and Marvel and DC and other geeky properties are gaining mainstream publicity, and you see like Variety and Hollywood Reporter and Entertainment Weekly covering things that were most people were made fun of for liking as a kid. You just see there's a global acceptance, and I kind of saw that. I'm like, listen, I love this world. I'm very passionate about this world. I'd always stayed like with a toe into it while I was doing mainstream news, and I thought like, well, maybe now's the shift. Maybe now is where I can finally go and do something about it. And it's been amazing. It's been difficult because now it's so popular, everyone's kind of doing it, but it's been a great way to bring my broadcast background to the new media, because I work in a digital sphere, and I don't have a background. I mean, even though my first degree is basically digital media, like I should have been from the get-go. But there's been such a disparity between the mainstream broadcast and in digital world, and I feel like sometimes it clicks and sometimes it doesn't. I want to be part of that next stage of media that people consume.
And do you think the onset of the popularity of social media, things like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, has helped that and made more and more things that were just 15 years ago, things like comic books, more mainstream, accessible, and it made it more easy for people to admit to liking them since it was becoming so popular in the mainstream?
Yeah, I mean, that's the word right there. It's made it more accessible. Like, on one hand, I get to proclaim to the world, like, oh, here's all the stuff I love. And on the other hand, people are exposed to it more, and they're like, wait, this is entertaining. And like, I mean, I've seen some people in the geek realm, they do get upset that they feel that their media is being co-opted by the mainstream. But like, I don't know, man, every time I see a new Marvel movie in the theater, I get so excited because I'm like, holy cow, I'm watching Winter Soldier, which is one of my favorite comic book stories, play out on screen, albeit adapted and changed a little bit for the media audience. But I'm like, I'm literally seeing this come to life. And I love it. And I'm enjoying it with people who have never read a comic book, and now they want to read comic books, or they just appreciate the characters for what they are in the film world. And I think, thanks to social media, we're seeing that. And I think, look at even Wonder Woman this year. I think Wonder Woman was such a well-received film because social media, the critics, there's a lot of things going against Wonder Woman in both mainstream and geek culture. DC Comics has a not so great history with women. There's this notion that a woman superhero couldn't be a blockbuster. But, I think Warner Brothers did a very good job of reaching out to online outlets and online fans and bringing them into the junkets and the press screenings. And that movie succeeded so much because of the social media push that it got. And I think it's really great to see that, and it's great to see companies realize that. But you know, for every good story, there's things that social media has unfortunately opened the floodgates for, and you know, it's opened a lot of different opinions and ideas out into the mainstream world.
Yeah, and that I'll set that up. But that's kind of what this conversation came about. Is that, and I'll be honest, over the past year, I've been wanting to have an interview like this and have multiple interviews where we talk about, where have women speak to me about what it's like being in on an online personality and dealing with the bullying. And the first time I saw it in mass was with Gamergate and how that explosion came in reading literal tweets on Twitter about how, well, it's things I don't even like repeating, but pretty much like, oh, I hope you get raped, or you get shot, I hope you die, and they would tie in racist things with that as well. It was like seeing that kind of stuff, and then that made me seek out the personal experiences from women that have written about it that were digital personalities, and seeing what the things that they would report about having said to them, and reading things and reading comments on YouTube, which before then I really did not read YouTube threads, and I started reading YouTube threads and was like, wow, this is not cool in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And that started asking me, brought up a lot of questions in me. As a journalist, I received some comments based on my covering of the primaries, and didn't like that I was reporting on certain factual things, but it never got to the point of that at all, like not even close. And I can't imagine that, and then we've seen spikes in suicide rates because of online bullying and things like that. So it's definitely something that hasn't been spoke about enough, I don't think. And I would definitely like to hear your comments and thoughts on that, and so we can have a discussion about that.
Well, so in so many ways, I feel like I've been conditioned to take what's lobbed now. Now, that's not saying that I don't fit that mold of like, oh, I was an outcast and people picked on me and I was bullied throughout my childhood. Honestly, I wasn't. I wasn't so popular that I was like, queen of the school, but I was weird. Oh, I definitely was weird. I like self-styled myself a witch, and I wore like freaky goth clothing, but I had a lot of friends in school and outside of school. I was actually nominated for prom queen, and not as one of those mean Carrie jokes. Like I legitimately like had, a very good upbringing. I had friends, and I had people who picked on me. It was average, but it wasn't until actually I got into cosplay, which is very prominent in the anime and now convention culture in general, where you basically dress up as a fictional character. And I started that in 99, 2000. And really quickly did I realize, like, as fun as it is, the people can get really nasty. And there were websites like dig.com and Something Awful, and spawned into 4chan and Reddit, where people just tear you apart. Like, they will sit there and be like it would be like things like, oh, Meredith looks like an 11-year-old boy. Oh, Meredith has a horse face. Which at the time was like, for a young, late teen, early 20 was upsetting. It was really upsetting, but it wasn't anything like what people say today, like, go kill yourself, I want to find you and rape you. But I experienced a lot of that, and I grew a really thick skin, I think, because of that, because I was at the end of the day, I kind of looked at it as like, okay, cool, I'm the one like out here making cool costumes and dressing up and celebrating this, and you're on the internet saying stupid things because what? It makes you feel better, you're jealous, you're insecure, so I had to accept like some sort of self-superiority. I had to put up like a wall between myself and these comments, otherwise it would have destroyed me. But it didn't prepare me for what would happen in the last 2 years. People are nasty, and so I'd see things like, working in news, when comment sections started on news articles, I saw tons of gross stuff. People just felt the need, to say whatever they want to about a subject of a story, and, rarely about the the reporter itself. But then then you start seeing, like, especially with Obama's tenure in office, you saw some of the worst comments ever lobbed at Obama, and then reporters who'd interview him. And then it got to be like almost like TMZ culture, where like if a reporter changed her hair, there'd be some like a group of people bitching about and saying, oh, she's so ugly and whatever. And it's like, you kind of start seeing this on the mainstream side of things. But then in like the geek world, I don't even say geek world, I'll say online culture. I think geek world makes it too specific. It's definitely an online culture. You start to see people being, it's not just like making fun of someone's appearance. It really starts to become a personal attack. And it became like, I mean, literally death threats, rape threats. A lot of, people would have their identities and personal information exposed, doxing. And I've always lived my life very much in the public eye. I think being in radio, you tend to, one of the things you do working radio is you overcompensate. You make so much of your life public that, it is what it is. So like people would try to target me and I'd be like, whatever. But then it just became a little too personal, like, especially with the YouTube comments. Once I started working at What the Flick, and doing some freelance for them, like people would just get like, who the F is this girl? Get this ugly bitch off the screen. She's stupid. She's annoying. She's dumb. She's shrill. Her opinion's so stupid. She should be fired. She's so ugly. She shouldn't be on air, like, to start. And then it's like, fuck this bitch. Screw this cunt. Oh, I bet she was raped by her uncle. And I'm like, cool. And then they started coming for me on Twitter. And Twitter's easy. Twitter's great because you know what you can do on Twitter? You can block people. I have an interesting policy. I like to engage. I think also because one of the interesting things about cosplay and convention culture is you deal with trolls. You learn that some people just say shit to say shit. So I like to engage with trolls. So sometimes in the YouTube comments, if they weren't overly inflammatory, or if I felt they were coming from trolls, I'd troll them back. You know how like Wendy's, for a while Wendy's, the burger joint was like trolling people. I kind of would do like that soft style troll. And a lot of people would be like, oh shit, I'm sorry. Like literally I'm reading a response directly. Oh shit, I'm sorry. Here I am, the asshole, bitching behind a computer, and you're the one on camera talking about this. You're really cool. And I'd get this like 80-20 ratio where people would apologize to me for being jerks. And you saw that 20% who are just, I don't know, they hate their lives. They're unhappy with something about themselves. They want to be on camera. Guess what? Anyone can do it. Have a webcam and a YouTube channel. It's not that hard. But the Twitter stuff gets really nasty. The Twitter stuff, you have to go that extra mile. Like if you're watching me on a video on YouTube, then you really have to go that extra mile to want to find me and bitch at me on Twitter. So I've tried not to engage so much on Twitter because it spirals out of control. And the beauty about my Twitter is I can control the message. But it got really hard for a while, like, because I started questioning. Like, I noticed I wasn't getting hired as much, I wasn't getting asked back as much. And I'm like, am I really this bad? Am I terrible at my job? Do I suck? Am I all these things these people say I am? I started to worry about my age. I'm 36, I'm not a spring chicken. So I'm like, do I need to start getting Botox and fillers and injectables and reconstructive surgery if I want to survive in this industry? Do I need to change the way I look? Do I need to change the way I act to become more acceptable? And that, to me, that was the most damaging, because I started to question my core being, and just from comments from people. And that was hard. And I suffered. I went through a really, really deep depression. It was between that and between actual bullying I faced among people I would consider like colleague or colleague adjacent in the nerd community out here in Los Angeles. To be honest with you, I went through more of a dark time because I got on the wrong side of some people who didn't like the fact that I was achieving so much, and they waged an all-out campaign online and in person against me. And that was hard. It's like, how do you combat that? Like, I can mute people on the internet. How do you mute people who are the real life extension of these trolls? So it got dark. I'm very, I'm open about it now, but my depression got so bad I attempted suicide last year. And it was hard. It was a very difficult place. Like I had the shield most of my life, most of my career. I didn't let this shit phase me, and then suddenly, I found myself very vulnerable and prone to these attacks from people that I thought were my friends, and then random. So it was difficult. And it's been a long recovery process. I've been in therapy. I'm tackling it. And I'm finding ways, like the way I soft troll people. Some people might say don't feed the trolls, but it's like, for me, I have this deep need to find out, why are you like this? Why do you feel the need to destroy other people? And some people you realize are just broken, and other people you realize they just want to be heard. And I think I can relate to that. Like, I think I understand that. So it's almost become like a mission of mine to, like, get to know these people and get to know their motivations. And it's helped me grow, I think, along the way.
And you said some things there that are sadly some things I have read about the depression, and it really sinking in and becoming a problem, like a deep problem. Because I think a lot of people have the impression that, oh, it happens on the internet, you can just brush it off, and they don't really think about or are unaware of the psychological studies that go into these type of things, and how people thought of certain things that it can actually trigger within them, who actually can start, whether it is something anxietal or a depression or any kind of number of things going on in their lives. And why do you think that? I mean, because we're not, there's the elephant in the room is that there's always been sexism, there's always been racism. And do you think the fact that more of these people with these thoughts have just come across these social media outlets in the past several years, or do you think that there is something about the online community and the anonymity that allows these people in real life who won't say these things to take it out on someone they don't know on the internet?
I mean, it's both. I mean, it's more people are on these mediums, but what's weird is you see a lot of stuff on people's Facebooks, and there's not a lot of anonymity there. I'm saying that wrong, I apologize, but people, that's their names. I can find where they work for, or who they work for, where they work, where they live. And people feel very emboldened to say their opinion now. And I think it's because online culture has allowed it. They see other people participating in it, and they feel like, oh, I can say this too. And it's grown, and it keeps growing. I don't know what studies are out there now, but the last year and change in politics have definitely shown a rise in hateful speech, not just, I'm saying, like, racist and homophobic hate speech. I'm just saying, like, people just feel that they can say whatever they want without repercussion. And, unfortunately, they kind of can. There's very little repercussion these days for these people. I've been fortunate that a couple people that have gone that extra mile, that have emailed threats, death threats, and sexual assault threats. I found their employers. I forward the information. I've gone to court. I've seen them fired from their jobs. So luckily, I've at least experienced that sort of upswing. But then there are other times that, like, it gets ignored. Hell, when I first moved here, I worked for work implies you get paid. I was on a digital outlet, and their program director, a kid they literally had hired from Chili's, the restaurant, not the country, made sexual advances with me. And I was like, I'm not getting paid. I'm leaving. And I complained to management, which management, by the way, one of the owners of that was a former colleague from NBC. Without naming outlets, they did nothing. They did absolutely nothing. And I was like, cool, I'm leaving because you guys are allowing this sexism to happen. And I had very little support from my friends who also were on this digital YouTube network and podcast network. So that was really, to see that. And the fact that, they didn't moderate, like, it was a live show and no one moderated the comments. Like, they were able to just let whatever hateful garbage that they wanted to lob at any of us hosts. And I feel like companies need to do that. They need to, if you're going to do a live show or have YouTube links, you need to go and moderate those comments. There's free speech, but then there's just letting people be assholes, and that there needs to be a stronger stand against that.
And you actually mentioned something that's been going on right now, played out almost ironically by Fox News Network, and a lot of sexual assaults and firings happening there. Is that, and I mean, I guess it's unfortunate you even have to ask this question, but is that something that happens to women in these environments who are trying to, improve their careers?
My time in the news industry, I was very fortunate that my first executive producer that I worked for was a woman, and a very amazing woman who did well into her career in retirement, and I'm so fortunate that I was able to learn from her. Unfortunately, the second news station I went to was not so much. We had a super sleazy news director who had already been moved around, and this was with Clear Channel Communications. Had already been moved around from a couple stations because of sexual assault, or sexual, not assault, advancement, issues, and he ran into that with our station as well. He was dating one of the younger producers, but there were several times he had made passes at me, and I, complained enough to HR, and eventually when the company got bought out, he was moved far away, but still within the news system. So you saw that happening. Luckily, I never experienced any of that when I was with NBC Network. Everyone there was extremely supportive, at least on the male side. I had some of the best colleagues I can think of. The only incident I ran into there was a female boss, a female manager who actually found, I remember during a yearly review, instead of talking about my performance, she told me that I came across as vulnerable and that I spent too much time fraternizing with my male colleagues, despite the fact that I was already in a very healthy relationship and my male colleagues knew my boyfriend and we all hung out. But she just said I came across as loose and vulnerable. And I'm like, that's not a review about my work. Also, ask anyone here and they'll deny that. So that was, and it's just, I ended up, leaving the industry a lot because of her, because I once she took over, there was no advancement for me. I tried to get transferred up to New York, because I was in our Southeast Bureau. I tried to get, more and more of my field assignments were being pulled from me. And I was like, this is, they say that sexism only comes from men, but no, I've actually experienced far more in workplace sexism from women than I have from male colleagues. So that's a huge issue that I feel like more people don't talk about. So even on the internet, if as many men sit there and say oh, I'm gonna, rape your skull or whatever, I get so much hate from women on the internet. They're the first to say, oh, she's ugly. Oh, she doesn't sound enough like a woman. It's like women are vicious. So that's also a huge issue. That I feel like if we're going to talk about online trolls and online attacks, it doesn't, yes, some of the worst stuff does come from men, because rarely do I have a woman threatening to kill me or rape me. But in many ways, it hurts more coming from fellow women, because I feel like, hey, we're in this shit together. Why do you want to divide us? If a man wants to threaten to rape me, cool. You know what? Also, good luck, buddy, because I'm usually armed and I know how to take care of myself. But a woman, it hurts. It almost seems more vicious. And yeah, so it's a huge problem. Sorry if I went on a tangent there.
Oh, you're definitely fine. This is I definitely want to hear all of your experiences. And why do you think that comes from women? Do you? I don't want to lead in any way, but what do you think?
Well, I feel like women from our get-go were pitted against each other. Both in society and mainstream media. A lot of us were told about we have to look pretty and be be a certain way. And women we're kind of told to be in conflict with another. You definitely see that from men. I know several exes of mine have done their own damage, where they've tried to put compare women, so that comparison is always there. And I think because there is less opportunities for women, we feel the need that we have to get to where we want to be no matter what. So it almost becomes natural for us to tear each other down. And I don't subscribe to that. Like yes, I have to work with plenty of women that I don't necessarily agree with or even like, but at the end of the day, like I wouldn't disparage any of them because I talk frankly if their work performance isn't good, but I'd never make it personal because unless their personal attitude is detrimental to the job at hand. But too many women just feel that need, and maybe I can't say for certainty if it's because the male patriarchy has put that on us, or it's just the way we're raised, or the lack of resources. It's not human nature, I'll tell you that, because I've never once felt the need to be that way. But I think there's just something somewhere, and you see a lot. You can watch enough media from our childhood and up into the late 90s, early 2000, and the way people are, and it's passed down. Women teach it to other women, men instill it. It's a problem that I think we need to recognize, and I think women in the industry specifically, we need to be more aware of it. And we need to be more forgiving of other women. We need to not police each other. We shouldn't, sit there and control how other women act or what they wear or what professions they choose to go into. Like that only hurts us and puts us back.
And that actually brings up something I've seen. Melania Trump, she was formerly a model. She did nude modeling, and she has been attacked over that by, unfortunately, some people on the left. And their defense is, well, Michelle Obama was attacked, but she wasn't a model who posed nude. And that, to me, has always been a little bit problematic. There's a number of things that pop off the top of my head you can critique Melania Trump about, and has nothing to do with her modeling. Or is that kind of what you're speaking about in policing what women do with their bodies, what they do, what they say, how they act?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I mean, like you see this debate online about it's not even online, like one of the longest debates. Women who get raped, what are they wearing? And a lot of that will come from women. Like, well, if you weren't dressed like that, you wouldn't have been raped. It's like, well, no. Like, first off, no, because there's so many documented instances of women being fully clothed and being raped. But two, it's like, who cares what Melania did beforehand? Does her having done nude modeling make her less of a woman? No. Some might argue maybe standing by Trump does, but I don't think she should be attacked because of that. If they're going to attack Melania, it should be that she hasn't taken stronger stances on, women in the industries. And there's been like a lot of talk where Melania was like, I'm going to support more about, higher wages for women or equal wages for women and more women in the workforce. And that's really fallen on the sideline. So I think if we're going to attack Melania, it should be on policy, not prejudice.
And I guess this is a question that I think will be beneficial. What do you think people like me need to do to help us, like men in general, that do not want to see this type of behavior online, or women that we don't even, it doesn't have to be women that we know personally or dating or married to or friends with or our sisters or just random strangers. Like, how can we help them online when we see comments like this? Because when certain personalities on YouTube is going through certain threads, you just see these ridiculous things, and it's like I literally can't respond to all of them. I have taken my own personal time with my name on them. It's like, this is ridiculous. Like, why are you saying this? This is dumb. Like, what do you think men can do more who are also disgusted by this?
Well, I think the first thing starts with conversation. I think having more conversations like this and in general in your life with people with people you don't know, just talk about it. People don't really read articles. I mean, some people do, but people read headlines. So I always tell people the most effective way you can make change is talk to people one-on-one about it. Two, if you're in our position where we're in a place to affect change, make sure people want to read and hear about it. I don't see there's not a lot of value of commenting to every individual comment, but making those comments count, finding a way that that you can have a dialogue with someone, be it on Twitter, YouTube, Reddit. Find the person, that you know you can have the most impact. If the comment's really nasty, fucking report it. You know, not enough people report nasty things on the internet. And while like Facebook is notorious about not actually banning derogatory media, YouTube's gotten a lot better about it. Their algorithm and AI has gotten actually really good at that. But I think the main thing starts with having these conversations and not being afraid. Like, you know, it's one thing to I don't think you should necessarily, like, if you see bad behavior online with someone you don't know, calling them out online is just going to put them on the defense. But if you know someone, like let's say you have a friend, male or female, who's maybe saying some things that aren't the most egalitarian, talk to them, be like, why? You know, and I've tried to, like, I've had friends, former friends, unfortunately now, where I've seen them kind of engage in some of this stuff, and I've went to them privately and said, hey, you know, this goes against some of the things that you say you believe in, and they've gotten very angry. So I'm still trying to figure out, how do you approach people? Because people, that's the one thing, is people don't want to be wrong. People don't want to be told they're doing something wrong. They hate it. So hell, if you can tell me how to get people to be more open and receptive to these things, I'd be very happy. But I think just having a dialogue and sharing that dialogue, you know, I try to on Twitter, I try to feature other people who share similar ideas as mine. I'll retweet them, or not just retweet, but like I'll retweet in context and say something about it. I try to join conversations, even there if they're with people I don't know, on Twitter, and try to add my voice too, just because, you know. But I can't do it every day of my life. I can't do it every hour, because that in itself is a job that takes you away from really important things. But I think, you know, as long as we can do what we can, and I think bringing awareness, you know, at the end of the day, just bring awareness to stuff, talk about it. It's that conversation, you know. I was talking about this the other day. Just, you know, the more you talk to people, the more they're gonna, if you treat people as a fellow human, they're just gonna be more receptive to everything.
And in the past couple of years, you said it's gotten worse. Do you think that was in direct response to Gamergate? Did that allow people to feel more open to say these things without having any repercussions, or do you think that has to do with the president, Donald Trump, or what do you think caused the uptick in personal attacks?
Sorry, I just realized all my lights are dying, so I'm like, oh, I'm going into shadow. So I feel like Gamergate opened the floodgates for a certain subset of the internet. You know, many people have varied degrees of what Gamergate means. Some people claim it's about ethics and journalism. Others, you know, feel it's about sexism in video games. Hell, you have this whole middle group of what I feel marginalized people who, for better or worse, have rallied under the Gamergate banner and just want some sort of moderate discussion. But what Gamergate unfortunately saw was two very diametrically opposed sides of very loud voices talking at the internet, and no dialogues were happening. No one was really having a conversation. It was on one side saying, you know, this is evil, this is wrong, you are attacking us, we need to have our voice. And many of those people, many of those women, very justified in how they felt, because they were personally attacked, they were doxxed, they were harassed, their lives were threatened. But you had certain people in that element that were appropriating the struggle and making it about like a more ultra feminist agenda. It was an agenda. It was like there were certain players in that who were making an agenda, and then you had the other side. We had many players on that side saying like, you're taking away our video games and women are evil, and like you see like this growth of the men's right activism, because they felt that people wanted to take their video games away from them and make sure every female was a nuanced, like every lead character was a nuanced female. I'm like, nobody wants that. We're just saying we want more of that. No one's saying that well, yeah, that's not true. There were people saying, but majority of us were saying, we just want video games that, yes, you can have your Tekken and Street Fighters with your sexy characters, but we also want games like Horizon Zero Dawn with Aloy, who's a far interesting, nuanced character, regardless if she's female or not. But you just saw this. Oh, go on.
Oh, well, Life is Strange is a great example of that.
Exactly. Life is Strange. You know, I never think about those characters specifically being female. I just think about them being good characters, and that's what a good character should be. So you saw this pushback from both extreme sides, and what it unfortunately opened was a Gamergate opened a floodgate of people who just wanted to be on the defensive about things. And I say this is that the more that people feel that they're being attacked, that what they feel is their livelihood is being taken away, they'll go to extremes. And unfortunately, you have this growing subset of young white males who have rallied under this banner. And it could be because they felt that video games were being appropriated by people they didn't like, or it could be what I feel is more along the lines of that they maybe weren't as successful in certain areas. You know, you see, you know, a lot of people aren't getting the jobs that they feel that they should be owed. You see a lot of people who are single and resent being single. You see just this push in middle America where they feel that once what their parents had, they should also be entitled to. And they want to find excuses. And so they blame anyone else but themselves. And from my reporting, from my research, a lot of these individuals who I've interviewed that have identified on the stronger side of Gamergate and the MRA side, like, I'll be honest with you, like, you know, journalistic integrity aside, of this, you know, I'm not being a journalist about this. What talk show presenter Meredith feels like, you guys just feel like entitled to this and you're not working hard enough. If you want a job, then go out and get a degree. If you want a relationship, stop treating women like objects. If you want, you know, growth in your own personal life, you have to affect it. You can't expect it to come to you. But you know, I've read a lot of that, the Gamergate and Red Pill and MRA side, and it's just a bunch of people who feel very upset that they're not given things. And now they feel like the need that they have to impose that will. And yes, I think Gamergate has made it more open for people to talk about it. But you look at you look at mainstream America, you look at our presidency and the election leading to it. Those weren't all trolls on Reddit and the internet. There's a large portion of America that feels this way. And I think now that Gamergate got mainstream attention and Trump supporter got mainstream attention, you see this ugly marriage of the two. And it's just grown into this ugly, multi-headed monster.
How do you think we as a society, because as a male, I do take some ownership of this, because it's even something that I've written about on a number of outlets and we'll be writing an ebook about soon, is that this is a problem, and it can come down to a number of different factors, whether it's this ingrained in these people from their birth, that they're told that they are owed these things, that women don't deserve X, Y, Z, whether it's from as you mentioned, they're upset and they're taking their anger out on the wrong people rather than what has happened in the government themselves. They're taking it out on women, or what? I mean, it's how do we start disassembling this? Because there's even Trump supporters who will say, like, no, I'm not a part of that. I might not like the guy, but I voted for again X, Y, and Z. That's still open for critique on that, but there's still a lot of people who don't want to be attached to this, but we don't have a lot of people coming out and speaking about because they feel that they're going to be attacked later if they take a side saying, like, yeah, maybe we should do something about this. Like, I'm under no impressions that I'm not going to be attacked for even talking about this. I honestly don't care. How do you think we do we do more programming about this? Do we have people, YouTube celebrities, talk more about this? How do we come across and try to break this down and change the minds of people who feel this way? Because that's only really how it's going to change, I believe, is changing mindsets.
It's going to be difficult because, well, on one hand, you have the using this term, the mainstream media, for better or worse. You know, what was the bastion of media has taken to be more clickbaity and bloggy, and they only promote stories that get the revenue and get the eyes on them. And they who used to be the ones to kind of shine light on these issues are contributing to it. Secondhand, you have this problem where now, because of the great internet, which was supposed to bring people together, it's really siphoning people off, and they're able to consume the media that reinforces their beliefs. So how do you even get media that would confront these ideas in front of them? Do you do it by buying more ads? Do you play the Russia card, or like the way that Russia played out the elections? You buy ads and you force this in people's feeds. But you've got to have a philanthropist who wants to do that, or do we just start by having conversations with people and talking with people and hoping, that we can garner enough attention to bring people back to a medium? I want to take a moment to give a huge shout out and thanks to Liana Kersner. She's a Canadian journalist who does a series called Dialogue Options. And she spoke with a lot of women in the gaming industry around Gamergate. And she really reinforced this idea that if we start talking to each other as people, even people with differing views, like I remember being on a conversation with her and Ash Snow, who is a very staunch Republican and Trump supporter, and very different views from me. But all three of us were able to have a conversation together. And because of that, I walked away a more informed person. But you have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to listen to things that you're not going to want to hear. And in your heart is wrong. But I think having more of these conversations and less screaming and yelling at cameras is key. And I think though, unfortunately, if we want to see real change, these private companies need to step up. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, these are private companies that can assert agendas. And if they truly believe in wanting to have a better society, they need to stop enabling a lot of this rhetoric and this garbage that incites violence. And that's from both sides. I mean, the fact that Donald Trump is allowed on Twitter is Twitter literally had to update its terms of service this week to allow Trump to continue to be on Twitter. Because for all intents and purposes, Donald Trump actually violated their terms of service. Constantly, I see on Facebook high viewed individuals who would violate their core terms of service are allowed because it draws revenue. So these companies need to make a change. Because until then, there's more profit in being divisive. There's more profit in having people angry at each other. And I don't know if we can. I don't know how to go back on that. I don't know how do we change this 1.5 year nightmare and bring it back. The best we can do is kind of go back to that grassroots movement and affect change by having conversations with people.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm trying to do, because I've definitely seen that as well on Facebook, specifically, like videos where someone's screaming that this and disenfranchised group is the sole reason for their disenfranchisement, gets millions and millions of views, and it's like, you look at their terms of service, it's like that violates like 6 or 7 of your terms of service, video stays. And I mean, there are things that are said on. It's not like we're talking about Charlottesville where both sides are equally bad. That's a completely different conversation. But when you see certain individuals on the left using the same tactics, screaming about this, and this, rather than talk about the things, you can see that also on the right, screaming. And there are a lot of big groups on both that are what I like to call rewrite journalism. It's really not journalism, but they cover themselves as journalism that contributes to a lot of this. And it does keep, especially on this topic, from conversations from being had. And that's what I think is vital to this. And I hope to have even more conversations about this, because when it comes down to it, it kind of comes down to, like, a lot of these leaders want to silence women on the internet. And I think that's scary, because why? Like, what does them being? I mean, the questions I wish I could ask, like, what does them being a woman harm you? Like, what is that? Why does that minimize her opinions? Why can't she say what she wants in a society where I'm sure you're going to say you are a strict constitutionalist? That's the First Amendment, and you don't want her to have that right to say these things like at all. Like you don't want to talk about these things like at all. But even as a man that is not white, I'm biracial, multi-ethnic, whatever you want to call it. If I were to say some of these things, you could be like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense, and those are things I've seen, and
Like,
I don't understand. Like, how do we we need to do something? I think.
yeah.
To
I mean,
help.
obviously, you have the group of people who are raised to believe that men are superior to women, and you see that a lot in the Bible Belt. Some people like to refer to a little book to justify their actions against women. Um, I'm a secularist, so I have a lot of thoughts on religion. Um, but a lot of people, they've been raised and they justify it. But you see, I think what some people start as trolls. I think some people are like, oh, I'm just going to say this because it's getting reaction on the internet. The more they say it, and the more they find people who reinforce those beliefs, they start to believe it themselves. And these are the ones that, this younger generation of MRAs who really feel that women are a threat. And it's because, and then they start reading like bullshit propaganda that tells them, literally says, a woman's only purpose is to provide sexual pleasure and children. You should, as an alpha male, because that's a huge thing of MRAs is to be the alpha male. They teach them ways to find the most attractive woman to bed and mate with, and how you should game women. You should not pay them compliments, but insult them and string them along and pit them against. Literally, there's a whole part of the MRA Bible, for lack of better terms, that teaches how to pit women against each other. And you find men who are upset because we got rejected or whatever. And they fall and they find justification for their actions. I mean, you can see this in any cult, in any group think. You see this with indoctrination from some of the more Christian religious cults. I mean, it's how ISIS operates. Not obviously same thing, but they use similar indoctrination techniques. You see this just in any group that wants to put other people down because they start to feel that they're better than the rest. See this with Nazis all the time. It's just how, unfortunately, in the only way you can really combat that is you have to show that these people aren't what you've been led to believe. But you can't do that until they start getting out of their little circles. I applaud Reddit to an extent that they've started to ban a lot of those. They've banned the neo-Nazi subreddits. They've started tackling the MRA subreddits, and I think it's great to see private companies stand up like that. And again, I go back to that. It's unfortunately on a larger scale we have to start seeing it change. And I think we more moderate people need to start pushing for that. I think we need to, one of the, you asked earlier, what can you as a man do to help women? Use your voice, use your platform. The best thing you can do is to say, I don't accept this. Just that's what anyone can do. If you don't agree with the way that things are, make it known. Let write to government officials, write to private companies. I think the power of the dollar is the most effective thing we have in America. I always put my money where my mouth is. I don't have a lot of money to go around, but I try to make change. And the one thing I can ask for anyone is if you think this is wrong, you think this is messed up, then say something. See something, say something, as they say.
And this is seemingly because looking at what happened in Charlottesville. Mm-hmm. There seems to be a lot of threads with these people because those who have looked into individuals that were who were at the rally, who were supporting neo-Nazism, supporting Klans because they were using chants and everything that were attached to Nazism. There's no denying that they were actual Nazis or in favor of that ideology. They tracked a lot of these people's online activity, and they found that a lot of them started out as men rights activists, and they started on their online presence goes to their dislike of women, saying women are holding them back. Then somehow that quickly turns into we hate the blacks, we hate the Jews, we hate all whites who are in supportive of the blacks and the Jews. Oh, we also hate the Muslims. Oh yeah, don't forget that we actually hate the women too, but we want the women to be on our side if they know their place. So it's how when someone gets that deep into it, I mean, I don't want to overblow that saying that this is half the population, half the population is neo-Nazis. The numbers are actually really low. But when you get that intertwined into this type of ideology, and these people love to be heard online, how do you really come back and talk to them? Because like, come on, do you really believe this, or did something happen that you're upset about that we can
Yeah.
talk? Because most of the time they're just going to try to go back and deflect into, no, I'm mad about this and this and this, and it's the women's fault, the blacks fault, the Jews fault. It's like, can we put that aside? Can we actually talk about this? Because I don't think you honestly, if you're a lucid human being, believe that. And then a lot of them will keep talking. I mean, a popular interview of this was when Cenk Uygur interviewed David Duke. Everything circled back to Jews did this. The Jews did this. Like, really, did the Jews do this? Like, no, but the Jews really did this. We'll talk about the Jews more. And like, I watched that interview. Was like, I don't think I could have lasted through an hour of that if someone was doing that to me. Like, I give Cenk credit for that. I would have been like, this is, I can't do it. Like, stop.
I would have started, I don't know, like there's that part of me that's no longer a journalist, so I probably would have just started asking really, like, I would just dig into that person with questions. How do we combat that? The problem is, it's getting worse. Like, what's Trump's whole thing? Make America great again, by reinforcing the beliefs that a lot of middle America feels, is that immigrants have taken our jobs, that ISIS is a threat that's going to destroy our country, or not just ISIS, excuse me, Muslims, because all Muslims are ISIS in Trump's eyes. The problem, like, now that we actually have our leader of our country reinforcing these beliefs, it makes them acceptable. And we have to see a change. We need to see a political change. We need to vote this. Well, hopefully Robert Mueller will get this out of office, but we need to almost take that Tea Party approach. The reason we see so much of this now is that the Tea Party, had a plan, and they put their people in place and they, even if they didn't believe it themselves, they wanted to rise into power based on fear. And I think the liberals need to do that. They need to work harder. They need to reshape this country. While yes, there was a lot of racism showed up during Obama's presidency, it was just made worse because Trump was able to make people think that was okay. But we need to get back on the same page, and we're not going to be able to get there until our country itself is on that level. And again, us as individuals, we have to like fight for something better. And if we can't change the minds of other people, then we just have to, vote for and fight for better standards and better, laws, and show that this is not the country we want.
Do you think?
I was just saying, unfortunately, it's hard. It's hard when you have a country that is so divided. You have half, you do. Even though, Hillary may have won the popular vote, you still have essentially half the country that wants it to be this one way, and another half that wants it to be this other way. And how do we come to an agreement?
Do you think that this issue specifically comes down to different groups in the United States that how they approach pretty much women in general? Do you think that we can tackle it all together, or does it have to be done on a culture basis or a socioeconomic basis, or can we just begin talking or putting out literature or having journalists focus on this and basically saying women are basically, you are valuable? Like Malala talks a lot about this, like women are valuable. And honestly, even if someone is a sexist, you can look at data numbers saying that you might want to have half of your population in the workforce and providing for that country if you want the country to succeed. So there are different ways to come. Even for those who may have those feelings, they might put it aside for different meanings. Because I don't think there are definitely, unfortunately, there's going to be always going to probably be a group that you can't reach because they're they actually believe these things, and they believe that the female mind is somehow 3 times as small and can't do
Oh,
these things.
like the Google engineer.
Yeah. That wasn't that. I mean, we can talk. That's actually a good point. I actually had forgot about that. I saw some unfortunate things from people I was associated with. Their takes on that really bothered me. Um, and there was some people want to make it into a business. It's like they said that this was should have been a teaching moment for him. And it was like, if you read what he was basically saying that predominantly half your workforce doesn't deserve to be in the positions that they are in. When you say that in a workplace environment, anyone of that group or who disagrees with him, they're not going to feel comfortable working with him because he's already putting people you care about or you in a lower atmosphere. And thankfully, there were a lot of business people who came out and were like, this is not something that should be acceptable when you look at the history of women in the workplace in the United States of America. And then we have Fox News issue going on with sexual harassment and all on those issues. So that entire issue, what is your take on that and how that is addressed in the workplace?
Well, I can actually tie in both those questions. So Silicon Valley, you're actually seeing a huge rise of an anti-woman agenda. A lot of the MRA staunch practitioners, members, actually thrive in Silicon Valley, and it's no secret that the tech world is predominantly run by men, and it is still, it's like that, it's a huge boys club, and we need, while there have been some amazing prominent women to rise to positions in the tech industry, where there's not enough. And so to see a change, to see a change of equality for women in the workforce and in society, it has to come through more women working in fields that are predominantly men, more management from women. I don't necessarily believe that there has to be hiring practices that say for every 5 men you have to hire a woman. I just think we need to start hiring the people who are good for a job, and a lot of women who should be in positions, not just in Silicon Valley but across the board, do not get hired because they're women. But is a mandate the right answer? Because I know that's one of the big fights that MRAs use, is that, well, we shouldn't, it's all mandated, women don't actually deserve these positions. So by having a mandate, it also lessens our credence of being there. It says that we only got here because of some help. There has to, I think, equal and fair hiring practices need to be enforced. We have great practices already in place, they just need to be enforced. And I think the more men that are exposed to women in the workplace, they will see that we're just the same as them. Yeah, it's just sickening. My mom has worked. She comes from the tech sphere. My mom's worked in. She was a management information service director. She's worked on mainframes, coding, programming, the whole lot. She worked on things called AS400s, which are mainframe machine that she can tell you all about. And I think 10 years ago, I knew more about them than I know about my own personal health care. And she, for the longest time, was the only woman in her industry. And I ask her about it now that she's retired. I'm like, what's it like? Did you meet a lot of sexism? And she's like, not really, not in the 70s and not in the 80s. It wasn't until later that she dealt with more sexism. It's almost like it became more prevalent because I actually don't know why. Was it because more light was drawn onto it? Was it because there was this push? I don't know. It's a question I want to find the answer to personally. But it's interesting to hear how my mom didn't deal with the amount of sexism then that she has dealt with later on in her life. And it's strange. I keep saying I don't have answers because I don't. I'm not for as well versed and as much as experience I have in this field, I don't have a right answer.
Did you say it was in the late 80s when she said that started happening?
90s.
That was kind of around the time frame of the moral majority in response to the Equal Rights Amendment that was coming across in, what's his name? He actually lives in North Carolina. James Farwell was pushing the moral majority, strict biblical some form of interpretation, not sure what interpretation he was using, that was basically pushing with Phyllis Schlafly that women belonged in the home and did not really ever even really aspire to leave the home. Actually, I had to write a paper about that in college. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah. No, I mean, Falwell's a very opposing figure, and him and his disciples have done a huge discredit for the advancement of women and people of color in society. But yeah, you're right. I didn't even equate that happened around the same time. And I think like, again, I think a lot of it's people were raised. A lot of people were raised, and I don't want to sit here and say like, oh, Christianity has instilled this terrible idea, but it unfortunately, staunch conservative religious households have this belief and reinforce this belief with both male and female children that women have a place in society. And then now that we have the internet and people are leaving home, they're moving out from where they normally live, they're able to spread those ideas and they're able to gain traction. And it's just, it's sad. It's sad that like we believe that still in this day and age, where it's been equally proven that a woman can do anything that a man can. It's I can't. No, I like the only thing, so the only thing that's different between men and women are a couple genetic things in terms of reproduction systems, but it's it's very difficult. And I guess to speak to my own thing is I've dealt more with sexism in the workplace now than I did 10 or 15 years ago, especially this digital space. Women are needed, you need a pretty face on air, but I've encountered so many times that it's like, oh, you need to be silent, look pretty, and say these lines. And it's not my nature to do that, and it's my nature to fight back. And I've definitely, I would say it's cost me a lot of work because I don't play by the rules. I don't play by the media's, or any rules that I have to be a certain way to work in this industry. I'm loud, I'm brash, I'm very opinionated, and if people don't like that, then they need to tune into another channel. But more companies need to not shy away from that if they're women. There's a lot of companies who have some very loud and outspoken men, and they're applauded for it. But I also feel like society also doesn't like loud, outspoken women. Instead of being strong, we're bitches. Instead of being, we're called shrill, and that we screech instead of taking a stand. It's all these little things, these little words.
Honestly, I didn't even know what that. I've heard that insult, and never even knew what it meant.
Oh yeah, I've only got it in the last year and a half, 2 years, in those YouTube comments, and it's it's interesting. Like I literally I've done experiments where I've taken like male colleagues, I'll say what they've said, and people will react completely differently to the way I present something versus my male colleague. So yeah, there's just this, I mean, you it's so ingrained in society, this prejudice against women, that we should only be a certain way. It's almost like that be seen and not heard, they say about children. And I'm not down for that.
And that's something I've from what I'm reading on this, and I'm seeing prominent female figures online, they've spoken about, yeah, I can say the same thing in a meeting, and then I would say like 5 minutes later, he's congratulated for it. To me, that doesn't register, because that to me is like you said the same thing. That if I think your idea was bad, I'm gonna think his idea was bad because it was the same. Like these are the types of things that just don't register with me. And like as I said when I was introducing, it's like this is something I wanted to speak about with women. So I don't have a list of questions where it was like any kind of gotcha question in there. I actually wanted to have a conversation about these things. And when that happens, when that specific thing happens, because it is something I've seen, or I haven't personally seen, but I've seen women write about numerous things. How does that make you personally feel? Like, is there a kind of reaction, or you just shrug it off and go bad again? Or
I want to say I can shrug it off, but the reality is it makes me feel insignificant. It makes me feel that it doesn't matter. Like I was an extremely successful producer and writer, and one of the reasons I left broadcast news was I got I kind of got a little tired that like I would be writing these scripts and these stories and putting together these pieces, and my colleagues, especially my male colleagues, would be praised for the work I would do. And then immediately something went wrong, I'd be the one yelled at, and it was my fault. So I thought, well, if I'm so good, if all this work is award winning and getting noticed and people love it, why can't I just be the one on camera doing the same thing? And I realized it's not the case always. Like, maybe like I people don't like for me, they're like, oh, she reacts too much. Like her facial expressions, we're talking fucking TV show reviews. We're not talking like Casey Anthony here. We're talking TV show reviews. Oh, she's too gesticular. She shows too much emotion. Oh, she harps on this. Harp, yeah. Men never harp on things. Women harp on things.
Isn't the point of a good television show? Because again, I'm also a writer. Isn't that to elicit emotion from people who are discussing it and watching?
No, you should only if those opinions reflect that of the audience. If the audience doesn't like it, then there's something wrong with you. But yeah, I mean, it makes me feel, and then when like I don't get callbacks or like companies don't hire me full time or whatever, it makes me wonder like, well, maybe I need to play by these rules. And then I mean, and that just that's what really takes its toll on me is people. An individual can say whatever they want because at the end of the day, they're words on a screen. But when companies that I work for read those YouTube comments and think, well, Meredith isn't likable, Meredith isn't presenting well, and then tell me, oh, maybe you should back off, Meredith, or maybe you need to, you shouldn't be so expressive. Maybe you should play more the role of researcher and have less opinions because that role will play better. It tells me that I'm not worth it. It tells me that my male colleague could do all this, and because the audience likes it, well, that's fine. But it tells me that I have a role to play in this industry.
We're speaking in the context of a TV show review, which someone should be more of a reviewer for that. I mean, that's called watching the television show.
Yeah.
So I mean that's kind of interesting to me because this hearing that and those reactions from that's like, where's all this coming from? Because this isn't my expertise, but I've read and in journalism and got to this spot where I'm at right now, mainly because of this, is that crowds now, especially on the internet, react to authenticity more than anything. That's what saw the rise of Bernie Sanders. He was not a polished politician. He didn't act like JFK in the 60s. It was because he was saying things that he genuinely believed, and people were like, we can get behind this because I want that as well. And that's how online celebrities on YouTube, like you're getting, a lot of them are getting there because they're saying authentic things that people agree with, and they're not being scripted. And I mean, just right now, I'm not sitting here with my arms crossed in the suit like it was this like nighttime news at 8 p.m. reading from a teleprompter. There's no teleprompter over there on the wall, and so it's like those things kind of sell. So why would that's the part where I get the disconnect from? Why would a company who should know all these things go read YouTube comments and believe, like, most of the time on these threads anyway, you're going to get most things that are negative. But if the video still has like, oh, this video got 60,000 views from this one segment of this one show, that's good. What's in the comment section should probably be ignored. Like, if I know that, why don't they know that? That's kind of my question.
Well, Bernie is really lucky because Bernie's a dude. I've seen female politicians with similar views easily get shut down. I think, and I understand it's a business, and I also understand, like, if like a director or producer came to me and said, Meredith, you're not as tight on some of these things. You can stand to tighten up, which I've been told before. Like, I take that direction. Because I've only been on air, like back on air for like 3 years, so I have a lot to grow. So I could totally understand if, like, as some bosses have told me, like, constructive jobs of how to be a better host. I get that. What I don't get is when they listen to the viewers, but again, the viewers are the ones watching, so you have to follow that. I don't know, man. I think a lot of it, like, I think, again, like, I'm not going to sit here and say it's just because I'm a woman. I think there are instances where any journalist, any reporter, any on-air personality, any actor, any presenter, anyone out there in the media could always hone their job. They can always like hone their craft a little bit better. That's fair to say. But I think too much we want that instant gratification, and that we see those comments, we see those likes, and if a company sees that that's not working, they're willing to throw that away in hopes of keeping the status quo.
That's kind of unfortunate. I mean, as someone who has studied some of the numbers, that's a little unfortunate, because that's bad business, and it leaves individuals, because a lot of the criticism online, like, again, just from my personal experience and reading data from others, that organizations that have done this, is that women receive a whole lot more attacks online. So if they're using that perspective, they're only going to apply that to women, or it's going to be majority women, and that's not necessarily an accurate representation of the audience, or nor is it really fair to the women themselves when you know the data behind that.
Yeah. You know, but on the flip side, like, you know, I do want to, like, so, but I feel like it's been a lot negative. On the flip side, positive experiences, since I've started freelancing with What the Flick and the Young Turks, I have a fantastic producer who has been helping me, you know, and it's a gentleman, and we talk, and he's very encouraging, and he's always like, don't let the comments get to you, you know, they don't know what they're talking about, and like, he's been helping me, you know, in this transition as to like a talk show host versus a reporter. So it's been great having several of my male colleagues at TYT are very great with women. And I think that also comes from being a younger and progressive station versus other outlets that I worked for that aren't so much. You know, you know, it's definitely interesting being in an environment of multicultural young people who care about the work and not about the color of your skin or your gender. So
is that you don't have to say his name, but is Amir produce?
Yes, it's Amir. Amir's the best. Amir's like my favorite producer I've ever worked for.
Yeah, I thought he also produced. Yeah. For those who don't know, he's been on air a couple of times on. Wow, I can't believe the name of the show is.
Pop Trigger.
Pop Trigger, and
he does Murder with Friends.
Murder with Friends. That's what I was thinking about. He's been on air a couple of times, and yeah, of things I've heard about him pretty much reflect that.
Yeah, I actually, as having been a producer for a good majority of my career, it's hard for me to give up those reins. And working with Amir I've grown so much. I've learned so much. You know, to find someone that I respect so much. I'm better on air because of him. You just can't have Matt Atchie bring us cocktails when we review Game of Thrones. Then things just get a little too wild.
Yeah, I mean, from a personal experience, the only on-air producer I've had for a show is female. So I'm not. So so all these things are coming from me from a perspective of, I really don't know how someone gets to that point where they're saying women can't do. We're not even talking about physical. We're literally talking about things that are mental. Like, literally, it shouldn't come down to male, female. Should be like, who can do this the best. So I don't. From my perspective, I mean, I grew up in the South. I grew up in the Bible Belt, but I wasn't raised by parents that taught me, said women are lesser than you. That never came up. So I mean, I can understand from that perspective. I never even began to be inundated with those thoughts. But even now, with the internet, going to college and seeing like and interacting with all these intelligent women, I would have to be. I don't even know what it is. I would have to be so far gone to think those things and say those things online. It's like, why would I say, like, I see these comments, it's like, why would I say this? Like, why am I commenting? Because I have a personal policy myself. I will never comment on a female's looks if it does nothing to do with her job. So when someone's reporting on something, I've even been asked, do you think blank is attractive? It's like, I'm not going to say that publicly. Like, it doesn't matter. That's not what she's there to do. She's there to do her job. What I personally think, I mean, yeah, I'm going to have a personal opinion on that, but I'm not going to say it publicly because I don't want to diminish what she is doing. So I think that's really telling when you say that producers and those within the industries themselves can have a huge impact, whether they're male or female, on how females are treated and how they think about their working experience.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, obviously being in Hollywood, it is a huge game changer, and even being on air in broadcast television, a lot of appearances come into play. But it's nice when you work with people who they care about the content. It's like, yeah, I know it's up to me to style myself a certain way and look a certain way because I want more work. I want to get out there more. But I value so much more when I can actually do my job and not regulate to just, like, oh, let's run down these silly bits, or let's do like a listicle. Like I really value, when I get to have more discussions. Cause like, I think another thing with new media and digital media, we don't have to treat everyone like they're at a fourth grade reading level and comprehension level. We can have deeper and more nuanced discussions about politics, pop culture, the weather, if we want to, like climate change. And I think it allows, for that growth. And I think the audience is better for it. It's just, like you said earlier, how do we get this in front of more audiences?
And I know we've been talking for a while, so I'll try to wrap up here. Is there what what would you have to say to wrap up, or any thoughts that you have that you think would be those listening or those who will read the article attached to this will be able to take away from, and something actionable that they can apply to help with this and make women not feel that they are alone in dealing with this?
Don't back down. You know what? No job is worth your integrity and your self-worth. And if you're in a situation where you feel you're being compromised by a colleague or a boss, and you feel like you have to conform a certain way or allow like sexist comments to fly at you, it's not worth it. I know the job market's tough, and I know security is important, but stand up. Don't be afraid to stand up. Don't think you're automatically going to lose your job. I think too many women don't stick up for themselves because they're afraid of what they're going to lose. Look at it more of what you stand to gain when you stand up for yourself.
I think that's extremely poignant, and I definitely want to thank you for having this conversation with me. If you're ever willing to have it again, I think it's something that needs to be done multiple times with as many people as possible to get this message out there and stop comment threads from looking the way they do, which is alarming. If anyone listening hasn't taken a look, go just randomly take a look and see what certain people say about things that are not appropriate.
Yeah, I linked to some of my YouTube videos on my website, so you can just go look at the comments there. It's a jolly good time.
And again, thank you very much, and I will definitely stay in touch.
Yeah, Walter, thank you. Thank you so much for even having this conversation. I think it's so important. And again, you asked earlier, what can you do? What can men do? This right here. This is so important. So thank you for reaching out and being part of the progress.
Thank you. It's definitely something I'm going to definitely keep doing.
Awesome. Well, cool. All right. Thank you.